Good morning and welcome to the Ask Weldon Show, episode 177. Today, we are answering the cry for help that I got from a viewer who says, I forget about my motivation to improve once I am in the game. What can I do? How can I focus? And a second question, dealing with mindfulness and depression. This one is now warning you again. I am not a clinical psychologist. I cannot and do not deal with depression, but this question came in, and so I will talk about it because it's not about helping with depression necessarily. And Travis, what skills in League of Legends transfer to Overwatch and which don't? Thank you for that final cap-off question to finish the show. Updates, nothing. I have no updates. Life is life. It's been happening. I got nice sleep last night. I was forced to lay down with one of the children, and then I just passed out, woke up sometime, maybe 4 hours later. Whew, what happened? And then, got some incredible donations yesterday on the stream, $677.18, I think, added all together, from a gentleman named Sharky. So we'll see if those clear, and if they do, that will be a big help in developing the Mac program, a bump in the week's revenue in order to help make Mac available as an app for everybody to use it in a little bit easier way, in a little bit more parsable way. Currently, we're at the phase where I am redoing all of the content. So this is where I need to read books, watch my videos, recreate the outline of the show, and generate a brand new kind of upgraded version of the course that includes everything that I've learned in the last 3 years. So that's what I'm doing, grinding that out. And not much otherwise. Should we jump into the first question? Let's go. This one is from Gabe, I believe. Shoot, I lost my... There we go.
Hi, Weldon. First, I just want to say I really liked your jacket in that C9 TSM game. It's really low-key, but I saw it. My question, though, is how can I achieve mindfulness while having depression? For me, it's a constant battle to just gain control of my actions or emotions in situations where my depression is at its worst. I'm not sure if you ever worked with a player or had one that was suffering from depression. And I know in your past videos, you've kind of gone over it with depression and motivation and something else. But I'm just wondering if it's something that, is it a constant, do I have to constantly work at it? Or is there something that you helped that player or players work on? Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. Really nice. I was going to say really nice sounding voice. It's really great. Loud, clear, full minute of conversation. Well put the idea so I could kind of understand it. I could do with a little bit more of your barriers, more specifics and context of exactly why mindfulness is difficult for you. So I will try to invent barriers that might be occurring, and we can talk about them. Usually when you have an action or something that is difficult, there are barriers in place, and people overcome those barriers based on their motivational level. So if people have low motivation, it's tough to overcome the barriers. If people have high motivation, it's easy to overcome barriers between action and current present state, like stasis, not doing anything. This is really common in physical activity, for example, where we see that it's much easier, instead of improving people's motivation to do physical activity, it's much easier to actually just remove barriers to physical activity. So instead of trying to motivate new mothers after a year to start exercising, it's much easier to just provide childcare, and it results in higher levels of physical activity for women who are undergoing the transition from 0 children to 1 children. So that's just a short example of how that concept works. Difference between... Yeah. Anyway, I can't really talk about... First of all, I've never worked with a player who has depression, because if somebody says they have depression, or if I can diagnose depression in what they're talking about, I will immediately hand them off to a psychologist, of which I am not. So therefore, I wouldn't necessarily be working with them. And the number one way to improve their performance wouldn't necessarily be sports psychology. It would probably be clinical psychology, because that would help them get better faster. Now, that doesn't mean that I haven't accidentally worked with people who've had depression. So that, because that's just the case, right? And that also doesn't mean I can't just, I will probably, but of course I can't talk about that, of course, but I can use my own experience. I can talk about when I had depression. I'm not sure if it was depression or seasonal affectiveness disorder, but the more and more that I've learned about depression since then, the more and more I realized that that was probably what was happening. And it turns out that during one of these moments, I was in fact trying to learn mindfulness. This was back in 2012, I think, between 2012 and 2013. And so I think it's a very applicable experience to your story or your question. So, Gabe, let me paint the picture. The time was 2012 fall, winter, and I had recently had a child, and I had recently graduated, and I recently didn't have a job, and I'd recently gotten a new job, and then I worked the entire winter through. And I survived, I think, pretty barely. I mean, I'm here now, so I survived. But it was quite a desperate thing that winter, and I think I can't remember now. It's all pretty mystifying to me. I'd have to go back in the timeline, but it might have been 2013, actually, winter. Although I'm pretty sure it was 2012 only. And the situation was I was working in a career that I thought I'd left. So I had thought that I was done with English teaching, but then I had to start English teaching again in order to kind of support the kid. And I couldn't put together a job in my field, exercise psychology or sports psychology, and I couldn't put together an internship. And even if I did, there wouldn't be a way to support the family necessarily to do that. And of course, we had a child, and things were quite difficult in terms of the transition from 0 to 1 kids. And yeah, it was like I didn't really know where to go. And so at that point, I started, a number of things happened. I started experimenting with the 5-minute journal, which was gratefulness conditioning. So listing 3 things I'm grateful for every morning. I started experimenting with mindfulness, wherein I basically just kind of like I found Headspace. I don't know if it was Headspace at that time. I might have found a different online app. I found the Mac program, which is not the Mac program that you guys are familiar with, but was like the book that I based it off of. And I found a number of podcasts that talked about mindfulness, and I started doing mindfulness. And I understand what you're saying about difficulty to focus on mindfulness, because when I would go into work, I couldn't stand to be with myself. So I was very, very, very opposed to things like walking into work, where I would have to spend 30 minutes with myself, essentially in my own head. So I needed distraction. I needed the ability to like listen to music or listen to a podcast or keep myself from thinking about my life and me, and keeping my brain from like running basically on autopilot. So, but what happened after maybe 8 months of doing mindfulness and doing gratefulness conditioning was I was able to be with myself again and take great joy in it. So my experience with mindfulness through depression was actually I don't think that I had that much trouble focusing on it or not. Like when I was doing mindfulness, at first I would fall asleep every single time, and I felt guilty about that until somebody said, "Don't worry about it." Then I didn't worry about it anymore. And then eventually I got to the point where, I didn't fall asleep every time, and then I was sitting up, and then I stopped laying down and I would be sitting up, and then I just got better and better at it, like just working out at the gym or something. And so the thing that I recommend is to see mindfulness not as a thing that you can actually do wrong, but to think of it as when you go to the gym and you start curling bicep curls, okay? So if you go to the gym and you pick up 100 kilogram weights and you start bicep curling, you're just going to feel like a failure, and you're going to feel weak, and you're not going to be able to do it. But if you go to the gym and you just pick up like 4 kilogram weights and you just start bicep curling, just kind of stare off into space and curl a bunch till you're sore. Then you go the next day and you pick up the 5 ones and you just do it, and then you leave and you pick up the 6 ones the next day, and you just kind of like just do it. Don't even think about it. Just have a linear progression. When you can't do it, back down a few weights, go back up. Before you know it, after 6 months, a year, you'll be curling really, really big weights. Now, I don't recommend working out this way. Obviously, there's a lot of problems with muscle imbalance here that I'm in my analogy, but the fundamental of it stands, which is that you shouldn't think about the fact that depression is maybe causing you to do mindfulness correctly or incorrectly. You should just do it, because it's pretty hard to do it wrong. And if you have guidance, if you have one of those recordings that's telling you what to do, right, then it's hard to do it wrong, because you can have somebody who's basically like scripting you. A script, that's what they are. Guided meditation script. And then you'll just get better at it, and it will start changing you. It's a physical change. Mindfulness isn't a psychological skill, although it is, but it's also a physical thing that happens in your brain. So whether or not you like it, as you're doing it, you're going to be changing the physical structures of your brain, and then they just get stronger and more resilient. And so that's what I recommend, is to not worry about the thing that you are worrying about, and just do. All right, let's go to the next question, guys. Hockey Gnome coming at us.
Hey Weldon, it's Hockey Gnome. I've been having some difficulties being motivated lately. Often I'm able to get myself pumped up during the day for playing League and improving, but once I get into game, I lose this motivation. In result, it's easy for me to fall into focusing less on improving and caring about the game, and instead dwelling more on my mistakes. Any tips for keeping this motivation in game?
All right, so what you need is some sport-specific mindfulness. Basically, the way that I conquered this myself was I tried to find spaces within the game to reset my mentality. And I started with, you want to start with things that happen every game and that are very regular and give you space to think, okay? And I started with walking back from base, since it's League of Legends. This happens in many different games where you die and you respawn. Not CSGO so much, but you have that nice tank time when you die in CSGO to think about your life. So where you're sitting in the can waiting for the team to finish winning or losing. So same in League of Legends. Anytime I would recall, I would try to make this a trigger for my mind, where as I was walking from base, I wouldn't be thinking about the game. I would be observing the game, of course, because you need to know where to go. But I would be trying to reset. So every single time I came back from base, I would reset my posture, get seated up. I would do some centering breaths, like 3 or 5 of them, where I would breathe all the way down till I could feel the pressure where I'm sitting, right on the bottom side of my butt. I would breathe all the way down so that I could feel the pressure building there. So I know that I'm doing the balloon thing, where you're breathing with your stomach and your back and your kind of abdomen area, and not your chest. So you're stimulating all the nerves and everything related to deep breathing. And then I had a mantra to one about compassion. So just like making sure that I'm having an impact on other people, that maybe they aren't going to help me win my game, but maybe they will help somebody win the next game because of the experience that they had in this one. So essentially trying to make sure that everybody has a good experience in the game, that there's no bullies, because I hate online bullying. And so that was kind of like my number one thing, is that if somebody was getting bullied in the game, if I was getting bullied, I would try to take it, just deal with it. And I would just mute the guy, actually, to be honest. And if somebody else was, to try to reach out to them, or like try to shut the guy up, or try to confront him, but like in a nice way, right? So that was like, I had a mantra related to that, compassion, and I had a mantra related to long-term plans. Long-term plans. You got to think long-term here. And mine was "Be So Good They Can't Ignore You" by Steve Martin, where I would just, I had this phrase, right? This is what a mantra is. You have a phrase that has a bunch of meaning programmed in. So you got to find a phrase or a meaning or a quote that embeds your long-term plan, your kind of like long-term motivation. And then when you say that, you can remember this whole thing that you're planning on doing with your life, and how what you're doing in this moment applies cosmically. I didn't want to use that word because it's audacious, right? But cosmically. And by that, I mean like on a large, grand scale. So what you should do is search sport quotes, amazing sport quotes, and just go through them all until you find ones that resonate with you and your plan for the game and how you want it to interact with your life in the long run. Maybe search quotes about sport or something like that, or why is youth sport developmental, or I don't know, whatever your mission is, and try to find a way to kind of reset. And then just have those small centering moments. You need sport, mindfulness. You need to find a space within the game to reset your mentality over and over and over again, the same way you would do it during meditation, where you kind of recenter yourself on your values, recenter yourself on your breath, recenter yourself. You need to do that in the game, because what you're describing is going to happen all the time, where you get sucked into essentially, the world. And then you need to step back out of the world or sensory impulses and everything that the game wants to make you feel, and you need to start imposing your reality and your will upon what is happening there. That is my recommendation. Use the recall moment to recenter. Make sure you get the posture thing, okay? Face forward fight. Get posture fixed every single time you reset. Take some deep breaths. These are the more important parts of this. And then the mantra is the third important part. But those two things, don't skip those just because I mentioned them at the beginning and they don't seem that important. They are quite valuable. Okay, last question. Before I jump into the last question, I would like to talk about the sponsor for the show, which is me, the Mac program, mindgames.gg/Mac. This is my training program. It's an online video training course. You purchase it, and then you get a login, and then you log in, and there's the 47 videos. And you complete one, you go to the next one. You're supposed to do one a day. You can do 3 to 5 a week is recommended. 7 is perfect. 3 is the minimum. And it's a session. So you get a lecture, kind of like a mini TED Talk in a way, except there's just slides. It's not me standing on stage. So like a mini TED Talk and then a mindfulness training session. And that's what it is. And it's designed essentially to build mental resilience and to build peak performance and to allow you to take whatever you are aspiring in. So whether that is swimming, whether that is trying to be a better gamer, whether that is trying to be a better student, and to use your motivation for that thing to improve everything else in life that you are obligated to do. So we have all these obligations on us. Most people shirk them. Some people do them grudgingly, but there's a way to do them passionately that folds into your main motivation. And this is a skill of discipline that basically allows people to accomplish great things in their life. Because every single thing you're doing ever, you will go through phases of unmotivation, and they all contain components of things that you must do, that you're obligated to do, but aren't necessarily motivating. And our ability to take our core passion and use that passion to then inspire us to all in on some other task with the correct mindset is the secret to high performance, to peak performance, to conquering life, I believe, in terms of achievement. So that is what the Mac program is all about. Check it out at mindgames.gg/MAC. Use the code AskWeldon. It is 100% satisfaction guaranteed, risk-free. So at any point, if you are not interested in anymore, or you're like, this isn't for me, or it doesn't suit you, or you never started it, just simply email and say, please refund me, and you get your money back. All the money I'm making on it right now is basically revenue that's going directly towards the development of the 4th version of the Mac program. So right now we're on the 3rd version. It's all video-based, and that's the same as the 1st and 2nd version. But the 4th version is going to be an app. So that's what I'm making right now, and apps are expensive. Ooh, development is expensive. But I'm paying for it all with my own money and the money that we make through the Mac, which I guess is your money, but thank you for making it my money, and then we can pay this programmer. All right, on to the last question.
Hi, Weldon. What skills in League of Legends transfer to Overwatch and vice versa, and what would you say don't transfer at all?
I'll replay that since it's so short and so quiet.
Hi, Weldon. What skills in League of Legends transfer to Overwatch and vice versa, and what would you say don't transfer at all?
All right. Sorry, I forgot to turn it up for that last one. Hopefully it was more understandable the second time through. All right, transferable skills. So I'm big on transferable skills, and the ones that I focus on are social and emotional skills. So these all transfer directly, and if you transfer them. Something very interesting about transferable skills in sport that I believe I've read this research, and I'm looking for it, and I will cite it for you when I find it again. This was back in 2011 that I was told about it and that I consumed it. So I got to kind of remember the author. I think it was Gould. I think it was Daniel Gould of the University of Michigan, a prominent sports psychology researcher who looks at sport development, the development of youth through sport and leadership. And he said that basically skills are not that transferable automatically, that they don't just happen. What they found is that the skills that you develop in sport or in League of Legends or in Overwatch that are social and emotional skills or coping skills or skills that you use to motivate yourself to overcome certain barriers, like mental resilience and grit, do not transfer unless they're transferred. So by that he means that kids who had amazing leadership, amazing coaches, and amazing captains on their teams who were specifically trying to transfer skills into everyday life succeeded in letting kids take their lessons they learned on the court into off-the-court scenarios. Whereas kids who did not have this leadership and did not have these captains and the people who intended to purposely try to transfer these skills off the court, it did not happen. They had mental resilience on the court, but it didn't transfer into other areas of their life. And you can understand this very clearly by looking at some sort of really muscular guy on the beach, with a kid. And I'm not bashing meatheads here. I'm just trying to use an example from fitness because it's really applicable. So this guy's really ripped, and there's two things that are true about that statement. One, he has put in a lot of really gritty, resilient work in the gym to get the body. And two, he's very, very careful about his nutrition and very controlling about that. Something that a lot of people struggle with. Most people struggle with nutrition, but here's a guy who's mastered his impulses to that extent that he can be shredded. And then you see him like yelling at his kid and or like, hitting his girlfriend or arguing with his girlfriend or hitting his kid or whatever it is. Like he loses control. And so here's an example of somebody who has incredible mental resilience and willpower over two facets of his life and absolute lack of emotional control in another one. And this is an example of how tough it is to take these social and emotional skills and transfer them over out of their bucket, because we develop them very specific to a task. So your job, when you transfer from League to Overwatch, vice versa. Now, I can talk about physical skills in a second, but I'm focusing on the social and emotional skills and transferable skills now because this is what my whole brand is about. I want you to specifically transfer them. I want you to think about what are the skill sets that you learned in League in terms of patience, tolerance, mental resilience, grit, focus, motivation that you think apply in Overwatch. And what are the actions and behaviors that you can do very easily in League that you want to do again in Overwatch? Think about way back when you were climbing in League. Maybe you hit a peak and you're happy with it. But think about when you first started the game, first learned the game, when you were climbing the ladder, and think about like the kind of hoops you had to go through mentally to justify, each step and each fall and each climb and how you motivated yourself, and try to take those climbing skills, the mental ones the self-talk you told yourself, and apply them directly. Make sure they transfer. And then also work on transferring them out of the game as well, please, just as a side note. Okay, physical skills that might transfer. Well, certainly we have composition, right? We have composition in League that you draft by, and you have composition in Overwatch that you draft by. So thinking about the game from a meta perspective, compositionally, it's a very, very, very different game. Momentum is very different. How you attain and lose momentum is very different. I think the value of life is very key. I think in both League and Overwatch, dying is very, very punishable. Or rather, it's like this hidden statistic where you die a lot in League, and people don't realize that you're losing this tempo. You're losing positioning and tempo because of the death. And what is the thing that you lost is like invisible, and so people don't value it enough until they get to a higher level and realize the hidden power of this invisible presence, and what death signifies in terms of tempo loss and objective loss, things like that. And I think the same might be true in Overwatch, where certainly there are times when you have to die, and same in League of Legends where you have to die and you must sacrifice and you must go all in and you have to commit. But I think that when you're low ranked, you just kind of don't appreciate the power of your death and the time that lost in terms of tempo and presence there, and maybe chip damage and chip gains on different objectives. And then I think that as you rank up, you start to realize the sheer power of that like missing time of you on the map doing things actively and the loss of that tempo. So I think that's probably one thing that transfers really well, is that compound. And that's true in a lot of games, actually, in a lot of like spawn games. So like Halo, for example, is another one that's just like that. CSGO is very different, right? Because you die and it's permadeath. So you don't get back until the next round. What skills transfer from League to Overwatch? Comp and yeah, we'll stick with that for now. Thanks for the question. If I think of more, I'll tweet them out. Follow me on Twitter, mindgamesweldon. Also happens to be my Snapchat and my Instagram, just FYI. Instagram stories for days, guys. Mostly gym fitness stuff. All right, that's the show for you today. I hope that you enjoyed it, and people have been complaining about these being too long, so there you go. We'll just end now.